do not utilize the chat. Please just raise your hand and or speak, interrupt me if you need to, if I don't see your hand, and we'll get going. This is the anticipated meeting schedule. Again, we do not have a lot of time and there are decisions that need to be made. So we've kind of designed this presentation in a very focused way to address those issues that require decisions from you all. So please keep in mind as we go through this, I may just interrupt you and let you know of the time so that we can just continue to move forward and we have the opportunity to make these decisions today. So before we get into the two applications that we are reviewing, I wanted to kind of take just one moment and back up so that we can get a look at the big picture. We have met a couple of times since our initial meeting, and I just wanted you all to know where we are. So just a reminder, the total funding available for this program is $4 million. Thus far, you all have awarded a little over 2.2 million. And the total funds that are unallocated at this point is 1.7 million. And we are looking at a little over 1.1 million today for those two applications. So, and just also to note, all of these funds, we have to be able to release them by June 30th of 2023. That is not a project period. That is just when we have to have those funds released, or would they have to return to the general fund. I also just wanted to remind you all, we do have this is a new program. And so we have a lot of very unique, different kinds of programs that you all have evaluated. And at this point, we don't know what's going to work, what's not going to work. And so as we move along in this biennium and we get these evaluations, these project evaluations and these reporting periods done, we'll have a better indication of what's working and not and what's not working as we move potentially to the next biennium. So just keep in mind that we do have funds that are unallocated. We are making decisions today, and these programs are very different from each other. So I just kind of wanted to give you all a big picture of where we are at as of today. Any questions on this? Okay. Let's move into it then. Okay, Deschutes County, the basis for partial approval, you all have seen this. I think there might be a little bit different. There was concern that the program's operation of Corporate Victims Circle was administered by the DA's office and should instead be operated by the community-based organization partner. The actual RJ process is not led by the DA's office. The CBOs run the meetings. And they have noted that shifting all of the case management and grant administration away from the DA to a small CBO would overwhelm the organizations, and they're not equipped for that. They also noted that the CBOs at this time don't want to just do RJ. If they took this on, that is what they would be tasked with, and they want to be able to slowly build their organization so that they can do RJ along with other things. So, and the DA's office did collaborate with CBOs with specific expertise to develop this pilot plan. We did go over the rules or guidelines about public or private entities. Applicants must demonstrate coordination with community-based organizations. And there was some question about funding. The two half-time FTEs, they would be new positions. The DDA position would be needed as that's the person who screens cases for EAP eligibility. And they would ensure that successful cases are wholly dismissed from CARPL. And they would be reviewing over 400 referred cases each year, and will be overseeing the collaborative meetings that determine the 50 cases that will be eligible for EAP. So The decision today you all need to make is whether or not to fund this program. And before I turn it over to you, Bridget, did I miss anything or do you have anything to add?
Great. The only thing I would add is there are 3 part-time FTEs. I think we said 2, but they're, just victims services coordinator, part-time DEA, and essentially a project person, project manager.
Thank you. All right, I will turn it over to you all for discussion.
I'm going to do my usual, Simon. I'll go first to help break the ice. I left our last meeting early when we were discussing this, and I feel like we got to the point of saying we had some, still had some concerns about the kind of structure of the program, but that we collectively, or I think there was most of us felt like it fit the guidelines and fit the kind of rules around the grant process, etc. And I feel like we were getting towards approving the funding, and to see how it would implement, with the view of, if I'm being super simplistic, if the DA's office continued to kind of almost like control all the funds, and the community organizations were really sort of 3rd, 4th, 6th rate partners in the project, that if there was a renewal application, that it would not be looked on as so favorably. But if the intent is to help build the capacity of those community organizations over time, even if they feel they don't have that capacity right now, but the intent is to grow that, to kind of, believe in that vision and believe in that intent, and then to see how that plays out. So I don't know if further was discussed that I missed. I do not want us to rehash everything that was said last time, because that sounds insane. But I feel like we were close to saying it should be approved, just with these concerns that we would monitor throughout the year.
Thank you, Simon. Elaine?
I think the part that still feels vulnerable to me is the line of communication in the DA's office. The ability for the information that gets shared, or the possibility that the information that gets shared in the restorative justice process through case management or whatever, is got a direct line to the DA's office in terms of if the case does not get if the case ends up getting prosecuted. And I think it's just that wall that feels really important to me, and I'm all right with asking that, expecting that, and making sure it happens moving forward, so that it's really tended to intentionally. But I would really like assurance, and us to expect assurance, that when a case is handled through a restorative justice process, information gained during that process cannot be used in a court case that could ultimately follow from it, or to provoke a court case to follow from it. If a victim and somebody who's caused harm just doesn't want it to, and has made that agreement. So I just haven't felt super assured that that line of communication is really protected, given the fact that the positions are being hired into the DA's office.
Yeah, Elaine, I can speak to that real fast. There has been assurance from the DA's office that there is no communication between them. They just coordinate them. They do not run them. They don't have anything to do with what goes on in those circles. And they're also working on putting together potentially confidentiality agreements between the two parties. So they've assured us in the letter that they sent in response to your all's concern that there is no communication or knowledge of what goes on in those circles.
Well, and I don't just mean in the circles. I mean in any aspect of the program, whether it's interviews, circles, agreements, disclosures that happen in one-on-one interviews. I don't think it can just be protection from the circles. I think it's anywhere in the process information and exposure happens, disclosures happen. So thank you for that. And I'm happy to just watch and see how it plays out, if people feel comfortable with it.
Thank you, Elaine. Tristan?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I appreciate the comments that came before. I echo all those things. I'm glad to hear that Deschutes is working on some confidentiality agreements, and hopefully they, are as comprehensive as they need to be, like Elaine suggested. I think that my feelings are similar to Simon's. The thing that makes me uncomfortable about this application is that so much of the funding is going to the district attorney's office. The definition of restorative justice within the rules says that this is, for community-based alternatives to prosecution. So to, be funding a program that is essentially an alternative to prosecution, but all this money is ending up in the DA's office, it does not sit with me well. That being said, we do have funds that we need to allocate, and I think that there is a lot of value in the program that Deschutes is seeking to establish and expand on. And I really, I think one thing that I really appreciate about Deschutes and that I would just name, since I've said so much about my hesitancy with the funding of the DA's office, is that I know that when they piloted the program, it was all of the funding was from the DA's office going into that pilot program. So while I acknowledge, that that's a really important foundation, and I appreciate that the DA's office was really willing to do that, to start their kind of small pilot program, I still feel uncomfortable with the level of funding that's going to a system partner. That being said, I think I follow along the same lines as Simon, where I feel that, I would want some assurances from Deschutes that they're going to move their program to being more community-based. I would love to see, collaboration that sounds like it's already been started with the community-based organizations to really talk about what it would mean to build their capacity in a way that feels right for them, or potentially partnering with other CBOs that could build that capacity. If this were a more, if we had more applications that were seeking the funding, if we didn't have that excess funding, I think this would be a tougher question for me. So I guess I would say that I am supportive of the application with some pretty strong concerns and hesitations just in regards to that funding piece, and would want to see Deschutes make efforts and some clear and solid plans towards how they're going to, when hopefully, we see, we have renewed funding, we see an application in the next year, I would want to see some really significant changes in terms of how they are purporting to allocate their funds.
Thank you, Tristan. William?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm excited about the confidentiality agreement, and really interested in kind of the specific language that'll be used in that. I think it's an opportunity to lay a positive foundation for how the district attorney's office can interact with restorative justice. So with that being said, I think I support the application, but I just want to say, we have the money to get out the door. I think, as Tristan was talking about, the DA's office funded a pilot program, so they're clearly invested in it. And I think that all of those things are positive. The only question I have still kind of sticking out in my mind is, are the CBOs involved in the process now enough to understand it? Like, so is the district attorney interacting with them in terms of, how funds are spent, and, all the different aspects that they would kind of need to be prepared for the next round of funding, have some education around that. So that's the only question I can't think that stands out in my mind, but I support the application.
Thank you, William. I can speak to that a little bit. They have been in collaboration with the community-based organizations from the very beginning of the establishment of the pilot program. So I would assume that would continue, because they do need them as part of the program itself. And so I don't see that changing.
Yeah, okay. I think that answers my question. I just want to make sure that they're involved in the nuts and bolts, because like it's bigger than just sitting at the table saying, yeah, we want to do it together. It's about really understanding the mechanics of grants and how all this process works kind of behind the scenes too. So that's all, that's what I was talking about. But yeah, that's
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. It sounds as though there is a consensus to fund Deschutes County as is. Does anybody have any comment to that? Is everybody okay with that?
Yes, from me.
And yes, from me, with the caveat that, you know, our concerns get communicated. And hopefully I want to see, you know, in, you know, I think there are 6-month reviews, if I'm remembering correctly, or maybe a different timeline than that, but to see whatever time they need to give some reporting to us, steps towards what we've been talking about here.
yes for me.
Yes, for me.
Same from me.
Also yes for me.
Okay, it looks like we have a consensus. So we will move on to the next application. And we're good on time. That was great. Okay, Conflict Artistry. They were initially denied and then protested, and there was you all in the last meeting agreed to reconsider. So the basis for the initial denial was while the applicant did sufficiently demonstrate an ability to work collaboratively with system partners, there is a need for further engagement with specific outcomes, and the application lacked evidence of information explaining how cases would result in system diversion. So the basis or the response was the rules do not require partnership or MOUs with system entities. The application expressed a willingness to collaborate with system actors on certain terms, and the applicants met with Lincoln and Lane County DA's offices and other system representatives to build program connections. Collaboration and conversations are still ongoing. Specifically with that, they have met with the Lane County DA, Patty Perlow, along with the Assistant DA and the Victim Services Director, and have initiated conversations with that office. They also have been working to build a relationship and an MOU with Lane County Victim Services, Emerald Village in Eugene, and community supported shelters. And they've also held additional conversations with the Lincoln County Juvenile Department, and a judge specifically allowed them to facilitate a restorative reentry process for a student at the Siletz Valley Early College Academy. And that judge has expressed an interest in continuing to divert cases in Lincoln County. And again, the rules specifically for them, it requires each applicant to demonstrate in the application coordination with community-based organizations and the ability to work collaboratively with system partners. That's also in the rule. And then again, I'll just read the bolded part. A willingness to communicate with or involve system partners does not necessarily require involvement of system partners in the restorative justice program. Bridget, did I miss anything on that? I just want to make sure I was pretty thorough. Okay, Bridget's good. Okay, I will turn it over to you all to talk. Tristan.
Yeah, thank you so much for the update. And that's really awesome to hear like the steps that they've been making towards, you know, having some more formalized partnerships with system partners to really lead more concretely towards diversion. You know, I think it sounds to me, as I remember when we or I believe the last time that we met, there had been some conversation in the letter that they had written saying that they kind of initiated these conversations that you're talking about. It sounds like there's been progress that's been made in terms of how those conversations are going. And I think that, there are some grants that we have approved that are planning grants. This sounds like it would be a planning grant as well. And the fact that they're making such strong steps towards having collaborations with Lane County, with Lincoln County, with the shelters and other service providers, I find really encouraging. And so I'm supportive of this program, of funding this program. I do want to just address one thing about the rules, and this doesn't really have anything to do with how I feel about the program itself, but this part of the OARs, the ability to work collaboratively with system partners may be shown by demonstrating a willingness to communicate with or involve system partners. So I'm pretty sure I drafted this part of the rules, and I feel like my lack of elegance in drafting is kind of very coming front and center for me right now. I just wanted to write that at least what my intent was, or my interpretation of this was that system partners like district attorneys, police officers, things that people, those kinds of probation officers, things like that, would not be involved in the actual RJ processes, would not need to be involved in the actual circles. And so I just wanted to give voice to that, because I think that the fact that, the definition requires it be an alternative to prosecution does require some assurances that there is going to be true diversion of the case, that it's not going to be prosecuted. So those are a little bit in conflict with me. I think that kind of falls on my shoulders, because I the way that I kind of drafted this, or that it ended up in the OARs, is perhaps not super clear, but I just wanted to lift that up, because I remember this piece of the rulemaking process.
Thank you for that, Tristan. I believe Simon was next, and then Aaron.
Sure. Thanks, Tristan. And again, I remember we talked quite a lot about this at the last meeting, and then I left early, so we didn't get to a decision. I'm almost like, it's almost like the reverse side of the coin of approving the Deschutes proposal and project with some concerns that it's not adequately based with community organizations, but kind of wanting them to be to develop something, to be successful, and to take them at their word that they will build that capacity. And then the same with conflict artistry, is they've come back, they've done some more efforts to show some of that links, or some good links with the kind of system partners. It is more like a planning grant and a development grant, and we have the funds to invest in something to see if this can really be developed as a truly sort of pre RJ kind of program, before it even people can self-refer, total front end before law enforcement, etc., etc. So I think we should support it, again, given it does meet the rules. Tristan, you pointed out where maybe we might want to, somewhere down the line, maybe tighten some of these rules as we start embedding these programs, but that's maybe for the future iterations. So I support that we approve it, and we keep it under review with the cohort of all these programs. It's about testing out these different approaches and to seeing which ones really, really work well, which ones struggle, but that's because the system doesn't reform, or which ones struggle because the community can't sustain it. And we'll see where we get. So it gets my endorsement or vote.
I think I'm up next. I've really struggled with this one. I haven't been shy about that. And where the struggling comes from for me, and Tristan, you got at this a little bit, is I don't think this is a planning grant. I think that this is an application that is actually very well built to source referrals from the community. And that is what it's built to do now. They've got Lincoln Community Dispute Resolution, Alluvium, and the Center for Dialogue and Resolution ready to go. And so they've got a case flow established. It's only a planning grant as to the systems partners. For the rest of it, it's a fully loaded grant. And I think the question that raises is kind of the one that Tristan just highlighted. What is the function of 2204? If the function of 2204 was to take cases that were otherwise bound to the criminal justice system and put them into community resolution, then this is, I think, arguably a deficient grant because it hasn't demonstrated that we'll do that. But if the rules suggest that sourcing from the community is acceptable, then I think the grant is within, as they put it, the green zone. And I think we're operating within a bit of a textual ambiguity here. My hesitancy comes because having been through the legislative process on 2204, I think the legislative intent was actually the former, that this was meant to explicitly reduce the criminal justice footprint by diverting cases that would otherwise be prosecuted to community-based resolution. And I don't think at this point the application gets over that threshold. So I've struggled with it textually. That said, as Tristan said last time about Bend, I agree with Simon. This is almost the inverse of the previous application, where I think if we were out of funds and we were in a more competitive disposition, I would have a lot of trouble with this one. But because there is money available, and because I think they make a good case for community source resolution, and I don't know that it's precluded in the way that we've written things, I say we give this a try because it's a model that we can study that is, it's a good, valid form of restorative justice based on community-based sourcing. I do want to put on the record, I'm going to be very interested to see what happens with the system partners, because I can see this going forward and never getting beyond purely community-based resolution or community-based referral. And while I'll be very interested in how that turns out, I still have some hesitancy about whether that's actually what 2204 was built to do. So with those provisos, I'm also a thumbs up, and I really hope, if they come, I'll come back by saying, I think there is room for them to come back to us at the review process and say, look, maybe we didn't engage with system partners, but we can make a pretty good case for why what we think we did in the community led to less incarceration, less prosecution. And so we did it directly in the community before contact with law enforcement. That's quoting them. If they can make that record down the road, I will be the first one to sing their praises. So I'm a thumbs up and wish them the best.
Thank you, Aaron and Simon. Any other comments? It sounds like right now there's a building consensus towards funding this program. I just wanted to give space for anybody else that maybe wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, this is Charlie. I echo landing more on what Aaron has said. I don't feel like it passes the threshold. I guess because I feel like if I think that whether, even though it doesn't say specifically must have partnerships with system partners, I think that it absolutely alludes to it based on the results that they want to see. And so I question the ability to produce those results. I think it's an amazing grant. I think it's an amazing idea. I have a lot of hesitancy because I would much rather see this as a planning grant than as something that is operational right now. I think that there are too many unknowns. There's not an understanding of the kind of the threshold of cases they're going to be taking. And so I'd like to see some best practices developed, some standard operating procedures developed, and because I just can see the possibility of things going sideways pretty significantly if these things aren't established and they just, start operating, as a program. And so I really would love to see them get this money. I also would really love to see it develop into systems partnerships. And I would really love to see it be about planning something and not actually having the expectation of the CJC expecting them to have like cases and stuff. That's otherwise I'm really hesitant. I'm not that my vote counts right now, but I just have some significant concerns.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, issues, concerns?
I have some reservations on a few levels, but I have a question also. So if we don't allocate all the funding, it goes back to general fund.
That is correct.
Is there a plan right now of how the rest of this money is going to get allocated?
As of right now, there's not a plan. I know we've had some initial discussions in some meetings, but we also haven't had an actual number of how much money is left over. So I think, Bridget, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we were near 500,000 left over if all programs were funded. So
Yeah, that's right, Rachel. I think it's around maybe 586, maybe between, 580 and 600,000. But I mean, there have been conversations about approaches and, when that question is the question on the table at a later date about what happens to the supplemental funding, we'll have, certainly options for you to consider, given the timeline, given the programs you have approved, X, Y, and Z. But again, that is, after we get through this question, we'll know more about how to answer that one.
thank you, Bridget. Simon, I think your hand is up. And then Elaine after that.
Sure. Sorry, I'm moving around my computer. I'm outside with COVID, so I'm banished from my own home. I guess a thought I had is, you can have planning grants and you can kind of have like action research where you're kind of planning and researching something as you do it. And so maybe one way of looking at this is it's a bit more like that, is testing an idea as you're developing and planning it, which I know a lot of these grants are, but this feels like it's kind of in that bucket. So I like thinking of it in that way. That's all.
Elaine? Elaine, we can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're muted.
Not muted there, but there. So one thing is that what it seems like to me, and I appreciate the distinction between planning and startup, because it does feel like it's going to start running the minute it hits the ground, is that it's really a much further upstream grant, an upstream proposal than what anybody else proposed. And so I think the caveat has to be that they have got to make a case and then be able to show that the upstream affected the downstream, that the kinds of cases that get handled before they're involved in the system would be cases that could have been involved in the system at the level that we originally thought. And so that feels paramount to me, and the evaluation outcomes measures that they're going to be gathering, I think, will be the thing that makes or breaks whether this was a good investment related to this specific funding, not whether it wasn't a good idea or shouldn't have happened, but in terms of the outcomes of this proposal. The other question I have, Rachel, is do you have a quorum without me on this grant? Because
Same question.
Because we were mentioned in there as potential trainers. We weren't partner to the grant and we didn't collaborate to write it, and there's no budget in there for us. But when they laid out some of the kind of training and capacity building needs, the Trauma Healing Project was listed as a potential trainer. So if there's a conflict of interest, I'd like to sit this out. And if there's not, I could still not vote if you have a quorum. because I don't want any perception of a conflict of interest. Like I said, there's no budget allocated. We've not got a contract with them. We're not going to be called up tomorrow if you fund it, but I just want to be really transparent.
I am happy to answer some of those, Elaine. So one, if you don't get any funding, you weren't part of the grant, you're not technically conflicted. But if you are more comfortable not voting, as long as you stay in the meeting and don't leave, we still have a quorum. We still have a quorum even if folks abstain. As long
Okay,
as we have a majority of the quorum.
thank you.
And then one other thing, just in terms of evaluating programs, we will be looking to see the effect of all programs. So one thing I do want to make, just as a sort of a general information for folks, we can't make one applicant or one grantee essentially have more rigorous evaluation than anyone else. So I totally understand what you're saying and what others have echoed. We will be looking for effectiveness from everyone. So just to caveat for everybody.
Well, and I would add back in what I said before around that leftover money, whatever, it's not leftover, that unspent money. And that is to think about where you could get value added to all these efforts by providing some centralized support for evaluation, technical assistance, training. I think you all holding on to, and this committee really thinking together about how to use some of that resource to back up the work that it really is all an applied research experiment, right? Every single one of these projects. And so how can we get apples to apples information, apples to apples comparisons of outcomes? And I think that funding could go a long way in getting some consistencies and some successes that might not be as strong without that centralized support. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you for that feedback regarding the evaluation stuff. Tristan, I think you were next, and then Simon.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of echo something Simon had said earlier about that you can kind of have a planning grant while also doing action research and testing an idea. And it kind of just reminded me of the Six Rivers application that had kind of said that they wanted to do kind of survivor circles alongside the development of the actual diversion program. So it feels a little bit analogous to me. And then I guess I just wanted to lift up my concern was more about making sure that there was a true diversion, or that whatever case is going to be processed through the conflict artistry program would not at a later date like end up in the system. There was a piece of the application itself that essentially said that anybody going through the program would still be able to pursue whatever legal rights, including prosecution, and that kind of seemed pretty contradictory. It sounds like there's been kind of a reform in thinking about their approach, and they've demonstrated efforts at that. The main reason I wanted to raise that is that I do think that this concept of community referrals, the self-referral, has a different kind of value in keeping people out of the system than necessarily your classic diversion of there's a case in the system, let's take it out. I think that the self-referral aspect does really strongly get towards this idea of restorative justice supporting a culture change in terms of the way that we approach and respond to harm. And so it's a little bit, I can see that being something that is hard to quantify or track. But I just wanted to lift up that idea because I think it's something that this application in particular kind of gets at in a really interesting way.
Thank you, Tristan. Simon?
Yeah, as always, it's great to speak after Tristan because then she's already said some of my ideas. I love it. I was kind of going to say something similar that there's so much evidence that the more you keep people out of the system and even having, the more you minimize contact with the formal system, the better those social outcomes are, the better, the kind of decrease in crime and recidivism and reoffending, all those other types of words that often are not the right ones. So I think I think it would be a real interesting sort of research data challenge, but there's some strong arguments to say is if you can resolve conflict in the community and harm, that results in less harm and conflict, and therefore equating to crime in the community down the line. So this is although it's not diverting, as Tristan said, it's not taking an existing case that's already been presented to the law enforcement community, to the system, and taking it out of there. It's preventing that same sort of case from ever going into it in the first place, and hopefully preventing future similar cases ending up there with those same individuals, because the harm, the conflict has been resolved and the relationships repaired through an RJ type process. So that was just, thank you, Tristan, for sort of raising that point, that I can echo it. And now I'm just going to put my Restorative Justice Coalition of Oregon hat on and make an unabashed suggestion that some of that role for a coordinating body that could help, dig deep into some of these issues and support the kind of technical assistance with the funded projects, sort of maybe a bit of an accountability as, the questions and concerns that were raised with your project were X. How can we support you in kind of meeting those concerns and exceeding those and bringing back that evidence? So my plug is that let's look at RJCO as a statewide coalition of RJ practitioners and experts to help with that process. Probably inappropriate for me to say.
Thank you, Simon. So what I'm hearing kind of sort of is moving towards a consensus to fund this particular program. I wanted to just give some space for anybody else that has an issue or comment or concern regarding this. Okay, so you all are in favor of funding this program then?
Is it relevant to do a roll call on the vote? I don't know, just to.
We kind of have been working by consensus, more or less, and so
Okay.
if I can just maybe get a thumbs up and a vocal yes, we can see where that goes. We haven't taken a formal vote in the previous ones either,
Okay.
So. I saw your thumb up, Simon. Aaron, Tristan.
And Carrie on the phone is a yes.
Okay, thank you, Carrie.
Charlie
Michael?
is a yes.
Okay. All right, I
Yep.
believe that, oh, William, did you have a comment?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I'm gonna abstain from this one.
Okay. And Elaine, I believe you're abstaining as well? Okay, perfect. All right, we have a consensus to fund this program, so thank you. And at this point, we do have a little bit of time. There is an opportunity at this point for public comment. So if any members of the public that are in this meeting would like to make a comment, they can do so. Just please keep your comment to about 2 minutes or so, and here's your opportunity. Okay, I am not hearing anything for that. All right, that is all that we had for you all today. Thank you so much for being here. Next steps are we have a commission meeting where this will be presented to the commission on August 17th. And then we will move towards having those conversations about the funds that have been unallocated so far. So we will give you an update in terms of when we're meeting next and what we need from you all. So
I would just add real quick, Rachel, for folks who are interested on the applications that have already been approved, we are in contracting, and some folks, each applicant is in different stages of whether they've returned their contract or whether they need some things massaged. But long story short, there are applicants or grantees now who are about to get funds. So we are on our way to implementation, just in case that makes your Friday better.
I was about to ask you that very question. Thank you. Awesome.
And
Tristan?
yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So you said that there was going to be a CJC meeting on the 17th, and also that there would be a discussion about the additional funds. Or is that two separate meetings?
Yes. Yeah, I think we're gonna try to figure out, like Bridget mentioned, presenting you with some options and trying to set something up for you all to have a discussion about that. So that part will not be decided in the commission meeting. So as
Okay,
far as I
thank you.
know.
And since some folks have been putting up ideas about those additional funds, take an opportunity to. I really, I think I've said this before. I know I have. So sorry, I'm a broken record. But I know a lot of these grants asked for that they were going to use volunteer facilitators. I would really love to see that funding used to pay facilitator positions.
Keep it on the table, Tristan. Make it out. Yeah. Hey, it's going to be really fun to meet again, because I was going to say I don't want to go without being with all of you. It's gotten to be a really good home base around some really interesting conversations. So I'm glad we get to meet again. Yeah. Thank you
Yes.
all.
We should
Thank
all
you
meet
all for
in
your
person.
input with this.
We should meet in person in a park in Salem or something.
We really should. We really should. Yeah, I've learned a lot from all of you, so I look forward to more to come.
Hey, Rachel, I gotta say, I was talking to you at the beginning and my microphone was on mute, but it's good to see you. It was good to see you. Good to see all of you guys. But I was talking to her and I had my microphone on mute for whatever reason. And so anyway, but good to see you too, Tristan, and we'll be in touch.
See you,
Bye,
folks.
everyone.
Bye.